The Sweet Prison of Being Nice, What the Stoics Knew and You Forgot. We live in a world where being good has become synonymous with self-neglect, where many believe that, to be loved, they need to sacrifice themselves, giving up their own peace, their own truth, their own life. But is this virtue or prison? In this video, we will dive deep into the invisible traps of those who live to please, the weight of guilt, the burden of the Savior, the emptiness of the one who forgets, and the liberating power of saying no without fear of losing the love of others. You will understand, through the wisdom of Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, why the true Stoic does not seek approval. He seeks inner harmony, because pleasing the world may even seem noble, but pleasing yourself is the first step toward true freedom. If you believe that philosophy is more than theory, it's transformation, then subscribe to the channel now. Turn on the notification bell and come learn with me how Stoic philosophy can help you live with balance, strength, and purpose. The mask of kindness from an early age. We are taught that being good means pleasing others. Be kind, they say. Collaborate. Yield. Understand the other person's side. And so we learn to smile even when the heart screams in silence, to remain silent to keep the peace. Saying everything's fine when deep inside something roars begging to be heard. Pleasing is a gift until it becomes a disguise. How many times do we offer our souls as if they were a gift and return home empty, begging for crumbs of recognition? It's curious how the world applauds those who give themselves until exhaustion. They call it virtue, what is, in fact, the fear of being forgotten. Seneca said that no one can be happy living under the command of another. But it's so easy to fall into this trap, the praise that becomes an addiction, the gaze that validates, the affection that depends on our sacrifice. With each forced yes, we build a gilded prison and we call this cell kindness, and the more we please, the farther we drift from ourselves. The smile becomes a uniform, the heart an exemplary employee of others' expectations, and the result? A facade of peace, as bright on the outside as it is hollow on the inside. But is that really a virtue? Or would it just be fear disguised as altruism, because love that demands our surrender is not love? It is disguised control, and it is at this point that the doubt that the Stoics studied so much arises. How much does it really cost to please? 2. The invisible price of pleasing is a curious currency. It has no fixed value, nor a defined face, but everyone uses it, everyone covets it. You give it in gestures, in concessions, in silences, and the more you give, the less you realize you are becoming poorer in yourself. That's how it starts. A compliment here, a favor there, a sure no problem swallowed with a lump in the throat. Suddenly, your peace is worth less than the comfort of others, and the heart transforms into an empty vault, filled only with the hollow sound of others' approval. Seneca called this tainted charity, the kind that does not arise from virtue, but from fear of disappointing, of appearing selfish, of being left behind. And fear has a sweet voice. It whispers, "You are doing good," while sucking the air from your own lungs. Every time you say yes when you meant to say no, you pay a silent toll, a piece of your will, your energy, your truth. Until one day you realize that the whole world is applauding you. And yet, inside there is a cold emptiness, an echo of, "Who am I when no one needs me?" The ancient philosophers saw it as a kind of elegant slavery, chains made of kindness. They don't creak, they don't hurt the eye, but they tighten over time. Pleasing everyone is a Sisyphean task, pushing a boulder of smiles that always rolls back. And perhaps that's why Marcus Aurelius wondered in his meditations, if the desire to please was not just another way of fleeing from oneself, a cracked mirror where the reflection of the self begins to disappear. The broken mirror there is a subtle moment when the act of pleasing ceases to be kindness and becomes a mirror, a fragmented mirror. where each piece reflects someone else's expectation, and none show who you really are. You start dressing for the eyes of others, speaking as they expect you to speak, smiling as they think you should smile, and little by little, you become a reflection of reflections, an image assembled from the desires of others. It's a kind of spell. The more others see you, the less you see yourself. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, warned of the danger of living under the judgment of men. Whoever seeks applause, he said, becomes a slave to those who applaud. And what a bitter irony. The more we try to be loved, the more we depend on the gaze that measures us. Pleasing is addictive. It's as if each approval were a dose of something sweet and invisible. But the sweetness soon becomes anesthesia, and when it awakens, the soul no longer tastes anything. You become what pleases, not what you believe. And when someone finally asks, "Who are you?" the words hesitate, stumble, and get confused, because there is no longer certainty. There are only distorted reflections of who you were trying to be. Seneca called this losing oneself in the crowd, the danger of confusing recognition with identity. And what is life? After all, when the mirror that shows you no longer belongs to you? Maybe that's why so many ancient sages fled to silence, because far from the noise of approval, the mirror of the soul finally began to recompose itself. If this message is making you rethink your choices, take a deep breath for a second. Stoicism is precisely about that, pausing, reflecting, and acting with awareness. So take this moment and subscribe to the channel. Here, every week we talk about self-control, inner strength, and Stoic wisdom applied to real life. It's not theory, it's practice. Come with us. The illusion of sacrifice. There is a type of kindness that shines on the outside and bleeds on the inside. It is sacrifice disguised as love. The idea that to be good, one must suffer. That to love, one must annul oneself. That the pain of others is always more important than mine. But is it really? Or have we learned to confuse generosity with self-neglect? The world applauds those who give themselves to the limit, those who abdicate, those who bend, those who extinguish their own light so that others may shine. But the Stoic sees it differently. He knows that virtue is not in bleeding, but in acting with awareness. Seneca said that true altruism is born from inner abundance, not from scarcity. Those who give without measure, sooner or later, begin to give what they do not have. And the most treacherous thing is that sacrifice is seductive. It gives a flavor of heroism, of purpose, makes the pain seem sacred. But all revered pain becomes an addiction, and what begins as compassion ends as guilt. There are those who believe that love is only real when it hurts, but this is an old distortion, a legacy of minds that confused surrender with servitude. The love that demands your destruction is not love. It is an unequal exchange between need and control. Epictetus warned, "It is not noble to lose oneself in the name of another. It is noble to remain whole even while loving." But this requires something that many fear, the power to say enough without feeling bad. The power to preserve oneself without feeling ashamed. And perhaps that's why the next burden we carry, that of duty, seems so heavy, because it is born from that same delusion between virtue and prison. The prison of duty. Need to do this. How many times does this phrase sound like a virtue, but weigh like a chain? Duty is a powerful force. When guided by reason, it shapes heroes. But when guided by guilt, he creates prisoners. There are those who confuse responsibility with blind obedience and end up serving everyone but themselves. We live in a society that exalts sacrifice and distrusts peace. Whoever rests is lazy. Whoever preserves themselves is selfish. Whoever refuses is ungrateful. And so, the word duty is transforming into a sentence. Seneca said that no one is free when they owe more to the world than to themselves. But it's easy to fall into this trap. It comes dressed in honor, commitment, and morality. The Stoic, however, sees the invisible thread that separates duty from submission. The first arises from conscience, the second from fear, the fear of displeasing, of disappointing, of being seen as less than what they expect, and that fear is a subtle master. He doesn't shout, he whispers. He says, "Do what is right." But what he really means is, do what the world wants from you. Epictetus called this emotional slavery, obedience to the wills of others disguised as ethics. And the danger of this is that when duty ceases to come from the soul, it becomes theater. We play roles, smile out of protocol, live out of obligation, and the spirit deep inside begins to quiet down. And it is in this silence that something darker awakens, a weight that does not come from outside but from within. Guilt. The poison of guilt. Guilt is a polite ghost. She doesn't appear with chains and screams. She arrives quietly, offering regret as if it were a virtue. She sits beside us and says, "You did the right thing, but not enough." And before we know it, we are already punishing ourselves for not being saints. There are those who wake up with it, have lunch with it, sleep with it, guilt for resting, for saying no, for choosing one's own peace, guilt for not saving the other, for not enduring anymore, for wanting something that doesn't fit within others' expectations. It's a disease disguised as conscience. Seneca said that the wise accept the limits of what they can control and nothing beyond, but the guilty do not accept limits. They hold themselves accountable even for the sunrise, wants to be every place, help everyone, solve everything, and when they can't, they torment themselves with thoughts that hurt more than any punishment. Guilt creates an emotional labyrinth. Each exit leads back to the same point. I should have done it differently. But the past, that old jailer, does not accept negotiation. He merely observes patiently as we repeat the same sentence. The Stoics called this pathos, the suffering that arises not from the facts themselves, but from the way we interpret them. Because what weighs is not the mistake itself, it's the attachment to it, the desire to control even what has already happened. And it's curious how the world rewards the guilty. They call them good, sensitive, generous, but the Stoic sees the danger in this compliment, confusing kindness with self-destruction. After all, those who constantly punish themselves for not being perfect forget to be human. And it is precisely from this forgetfulness that the next burden arises, the burden of trying to save everyone, even when we are already drowning. The burden of the Savior. There is a type of fatigue that does not come from the body. It comes from the soul that insists on carrying the world. Do you recognize it? That exhaustion that arises from the desperate desire to fix everything, to help everyone, to be the safe harbor for those who no longer even try to swim. It is the burden of the Savior, the hero who forgot that they also need rest, the shoulder that supports, even when it no longer has the strength to stand. At first, it seems noble, and it is. But there comes a moment when the act of saving becomes a habit, and the habit becomes an addiction. You start to exist for the sake of others' falls, and without realizing it, you become a prisoner of pains that are not yours. Seneca warned, "He who tries to cure all ills ends up suffering from all of them." And yet we insist, don't we? Because the Savior is applauded. The world loves those who suffer for others and calls it virtue. But there's a cruel detail. No one asks what happens when the Savior collapses, when the hero needs help but no longer knows how to ask for it. Epictetus said that it is impossible to help those who do not want to help themselves. And yet, we throw ourselves into the water to rescue those who refuse to swim. It's like diving into someone else's storms and calling the shipwreck purpose. The Savior forgets a simple truth. You cannot offer air when you are already out of breath. But there is something deeper in this impulse to save, something that the Stoics understood well, because behind this need to rescue others often lies the escape from oneself, and it is there, in that silence between altruism and emptiness, that the question few have the courage to ask is born. Why do we feel so afraid to choose ourselves first? 8. The echo of emptiness. There is a type of loneliness that cannot be cured with company. It is the emptiness that remains when the soul gets used to living for others. It is the silence that echoes after the applause. When the voices fall silent and only the sound of one's own exhaustion remains. Pleasing is addictive. Each smile received, each thank you said sweetly, acts like a small dose of approval, a social drug that numbs the conscience. And so we go on, addicted to the feeling of being useful, needed, loved, until we realize that all this love has a short shelf life, because the love that comes from pleasing dissolves along with the favor. Today, you are essential. Tomorrow, replaceable. Today, they call you generous. Tomorrow, they call you absent. And it is in this roller coaster of expectations that the spirit begins to wither. Seneca used to say that the soul that lives on applause dies in silence. And the silence, when it arrives, is deafening. You start to wonder, who am I when no one needs me? But the answer doesn't come, because the I was gradually lost in every concession, in every forced smile, in every yes said against one's will. The emptiness is the echo of all the times you abandoned yourself to fit into someone else's space, and the more you try to fill it with new people, the bigger it grows because the hole is not on the outside, but at the center of everything you have stopped being. The Stoics saw this emptiness as a calling, not a punishment, a reminder that no one finds purpose living solely in the reflections of others. But the modern world cannot bear silence, and fills that echo with noise, distraction, and rush. Thus, the emptiness is being muffled, not healed. And it is precisely from this suppression that the next dilemma arises: the fear of displeasing, the dread of losing the love, respect, or admiration of those to whom, without realizing it, we have given the power to define us, the courage to displease. There is a rare kind of courage, the one that does not show off, does not shout, does not wear armor. It is the silent courage of displeasing. To look someone in the eyes and say, I can't, I don't want to. It's not fair to me. It is the strength that arises when the need to be loved finally loses to the desire to be true. The world, however, does not like those who choose truth over convenience. He prefers the submissive, the docile, the one who nods even when the heart disagrees. But there comes a moment when the soul tires of bending, and when it rises, it scares even those who applauded the most. Epictetus called this inner freedom, the ability to live according to one's own reason, not according to the approval of others. It is the moment when we stop asking for permission to exist, when we stop measuring our words for fear of losing affection, because love that demands lies is merely a disguise for controlled displeasing is, paradoxically, an act of love, the love for oneself. It is refusing the role of a character in a script written by others. It is having the audacity to say, I prefer to be rejected by those who don't understand than accepted by those who don't see me. The Stoics saw this as a daily exercise, like a workout for the soul. With each honest choice, with each imposed limit, we strengthen the invisible muscle of integrity. But it is a solitary training, because being authentic sometimes hurts more than being false. And those who dare to remain whole learn early. Pleasing is easy. Being integral is what comes at a cost. And it is precisely at this point, when we stop wanting to please and start wanting to understand, that the deepest search of all begins, the inner harmony, where the heart and reason finally learn to walk side by side. Inner harmony. There is a calmness that cannot be bought, and it begins the moment you stop fighting against what is. It's not about giving up, but about aligning yourself. Inner harmony is like the sound of a perfectly tuned string. It is neither loose nor too tight. It vibrates at the right point between duty and freedom. The Stoic knew that this harmony does not arise from the silence of the world, but from the silence within. Because when the mind quiets, external noise loses its power to govern. It is not the end of problems. It is the beginning of clarity. Seneca said that no wind is favorable to the sailor who doesn't know where he is going. And perhaps tranquility is precisely that, the compass that emerges when we stop, searching outside for what has always been within, inner. Harmony is not a reward. It is an exercise. It is choosing every day to be consistent with oneself, even when the world demands otherwise. It is to act with justice without expecting applause, to help without seeking reward, to love without losing oneself. It is the art of staying whole amidst chaos, of being a river even when the world tries to turn you into a storm. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his cold Roman dawns that a man at peace with himself is like a rock in the sea. The waves cover it, but it remains firm. And this firmness is not hardness. It is serenity, because those who are in harmony don't need to prove anything. They simply are. But the road to harmony has an inevitable obstacle: the ego, this old subtle enemy that whispers compliments, dresses in reason, and little by little steals the serenity that took a lifetime to build. If you have made it this far, take a deep breath and recognize something. Few people have the courage to look within and question their own truths. This is already an act of Stoic strength. Thank you for watching. Until the end, really, I hope this video has ignited in you the desire to live with more balance, purpose, and serenity. If this message touched you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this today, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me. Every week, new reflections on philosophy, ancient wisdom, and inner strength. Because Stoicism is not about changing the world, it's about learning to stand firm, even when the world changes around you.